In the first century, the Roman Empire held Jerusalem in a suffocating grip. They maintained their famous Peace of Rome through a very specific strategy, the constant public threat of lethal violence. Rome didn't rule alone. A secondary power structure, the religious elite at the temple, acted as gatekeepers to the divine. They held total political control over who was allowed to worship, who was excluded, and how much it would cost to participate in the ancient sacrificial system. Jesus enters the city gate on a donkey, mirroring the coronation of King Solomon. To the Roman and religious authorities watching, this is an unmistakable claim to the throne. He selects an animal that has never been ridden. In the ancient world, unridden beasts were reserved for sacred sacrifices. By choosing this donkey, he is signaling that his path to power leads through his own death, rather than the blood of his enemies. The crowd responds with palm branches and shouts of Hosanna, political symbols used to welcome a liberating hero. By hailing him as the King of Israel, these pilgrims are openly participating in a rebellion against the current establishment. This arrival establishes Jesus as a direct, calculated threat. He has moved from the wilderness to the capital, forcing a confrontation with the two powers that rule Jerusalem. The very next day, Jesus walks up to a leafy fig tree, finds no fruit on it, and curses it to wither and die. For decades, ancient prophets had used the image of a barren fruit tree as a metaphor to condemn a corrupt religious institution. Jesus brings that metaphor into physical reality. He marches straight into the temple courtyard, builds a whip, and starts turning over tables. He drives out the livestock and the money changers, temporarily shutting down the entire sacrificial system the elite used to maintain their grip on the public. He follows this up with a massive claim. He states that if this physical temple is destroyed, he will rebuild it in 3 days. He is talking about his own body. He intends to replace this localized building with himself, becoming the sole access point to God for all people. The high priest, Caiaphas, recognizes the existential threat. If this rebellion continues, Rome will crush whatever power the Jewish leaders have left. They need to eliminate him. One of Jesus' own disciples, Judas, provides the opening, agreeing to hand him over to the authorities for 30 pieces of silver. While they plot his murder, Jesus sits down with his followers for the Passover meal, a dinner celebrating their ancient rescue from Egyptian slavery. He takes the unleavened bread and the wine and reassigns their meaning. He tells them these elements now represent his own broken body and spilled blood, initiating a new agreement between God and humanity. The religious elite orchestrate a quiet assassination to protect their status. In doing so, they hand Jesus the exact mechanism he requires to render their obsolete systems completely irrelevant. Under the cover of darkness, the empire springs its trap. They arrest Jesus and rush him through mock trials, and then drag him to the execution grounds to face the ancient world's most inhumane weapon, the cross.
Crucifixion was highly engineered. It was designed to maximize public humiliation and inflict prolonged agony. Rome used it specifically to terrorize any rival who dared to challenge the absolute authority of Caesar. The soldiers dress him in a purple robe, shove a reed into his hand as a scepter, and press a crown of woven thorns into his scalp. They intend to mock his political claims, but they inadvertently perform an ironic, literal coronation ceremony. The Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, even nails a sign above Jesus' head that reads, King of the Jews. To Pilate, it's a political joke at the expense of the religious elite, but the title permanently cements the cross as his actual throne. Hanging from that wood, Jesus absorbs the full force of the empire. He takes the penalty for humanity's corruption upon himself and uses his dying breaths to offer total forgiveness to the very people murdering him. He takes the ultimate instrument of public terror and subverts it completely, turning the empire's weapon of death into the engine of global salvation. The next day, The narrative grinds to a halt. The king is dead. His body is sealed behind a massive stone. The disciples have scattered in terror, and the Roman authorities believe the rebellion has been thoroughly crushed. This day of absolute nothingness operates as a deliberate Sabbath rest. Just as God rested on the seventh day after creating the world, Jesus rests in the tomb because his work of recreating the world is entirely finished. The stillness of Saturday proves a vital point. Accessing God no longer requires anxious religious striving or political maneuvering. The required labor has been completely accomplished by a king resting in the grave. Then Sunday morning arrives. A group of women visit the tomb and find the massive stone rolled away. The mock coronation of Friday is suddenly validated by physical reality. Jesus has walked out of the grave alive. This creates a catastrophic problem for the establishment. Death is the ultimate tool empires use to coerce behavior. By walking through death and coming out the other side, Jesus strips Rome of its primary weapon, rendering the empire powerless against his followers. In the ancient world, when a new Caesar took the throne, the empire would send out a political broadcast to the inhabited lands. In Greek, this announcement was called a euangelion, a word we translate today as gospel. Standing at the empty tomb, those women receive a rival euangelion to broadcast. They are instructed to announce that a crucified Jewish man has risen from the dead to become the true king over the entire world. Before ascending, this resurrected king gathers his followers and gives them a final commission. He deploys them as a global construction crew, tasked with building a multi-ethnic kingdom that operates on his laws of life, rather than the threat of death. Holy Week concludes as a cosmic coup. The resurrection dismantled the old world order to inaugurate an eternal kingdom that no human empire can touch.